Let's break this bitch down. Act 1. Let's set some stuff up.
One of the cagiest films we've ever talked about on this show, which is saying a lot, starts with Joel Kinnaman's character, the driver, talking with his son in a car who asks his dad about his sister, who died during childbirth. The driver, aka David, reassures his son that his mom and the new baby that he's on the way to the delivery of will be fine. He tells his son not to let his mom know that he knows about the dead baby and to keep it their secret, because sometimes it's okay to have a secret, like the fact that he let him sit in the front seat or that they have candy and ice cream during the week sometimes, which is foreshadowing about his secret. Also a little weird that he keeps those photos in the glove box of his car, but whatever. The ultrasound photos and pictures.
Is that not where you kept yours?
Yeah, that's where I keep all my pictures.
By the way, speaking of dead babies, how did the dead baby cross the road? No, sorry. We stopped doing those.
Jesus Christ.
I was going to say it's because it was stapled to a chicken, but I won't. We've matured beyond that.
Chicken jockey.
God.
Oh my God. That'll date this episode.
That'll date it really badly.
David drops his son off at his wife's mom's house on the way to the hospital, and David chats on the phone with a coworker on the speakerphone, talking into the butt end of the phone, which is totally fine to do in the privacy of your car, but just a public service announcement makes you the biggest dick face in the world if you try to do it on public transit, FYI. Please stop doing that. Everybody hates you. David is worried about missing something at work, but his coworker reassures him that everything will be fine and to concentrate on being with his wife, and David reveals that they decided to keep the sex of the baby a surprise. We see various shots of David driving through Las Vegas, and we see that David's nearly out of gas, but he gets a call from his wife, and we hear that she's already in labor and worried because she feels like the pain of this birth is worse than that of her previous children. He nervously makes his way to the hospital, and we see him pull into a basement parking garage. While waiting for a space, David spots a creepy dude with red hair and a red jacket, staring at him from a distance. David thinks nothing of it and pulls into a spot, but while rifling through a baby go bag he packed, the red-headed creep hops in the backseat of the car and says, "Pick a card," like Eddie King from Deadfall.
That felt like a little homage.
Yeah.
Though Joel Kinnaman's character, spoilers, picks it up later.
Yeah.
Puts it in his pocket.
One of my couple of questions, because I don't really answer it. Like it was dropped on the edit. Cage's character, the passenger, pulls a gun on David when he says that he's not an Uber driver, and David asks if the guy's robbing him. The passenger says, "I didn't say I was robbing you. I said pick a card. Come on, a card. You know, clubs, hearts." David picks, he's got a Boston accent. Sort of.
Sort of. Like a Dunkin' Donuts Boston accent.
Sometimes there, sometimes it's not. It's basically just he pronounces certain words like cad, Boston.
Car.
Like I said, he just watched a bunch of Boston or Dunkin' Donuts commercials to practice, and that's the accent that he went with.
Yeah. It's better than his Captain Corelli mandolin.
Oh my God,
accent.
so much better.
Better than I think all the other accents we've heard him do, except maybe a Southern one. He does those pretty well.
Except his Forrest Gump Con Air accent.
Yeah. He does Texas accents okay.
Yeah.
True.
David picks the ace of spades since he's a big Motorhead fan, and the passenger pulls out the exact card while saying, "I just knew you were going to say that card." The passenger tells David to drive while chugging from a flask, as David pleads with him to let him go since his wife's about to give birth. The passenger tells David to leave the hospital and drive to the Strip since he likes the lights, and David says he has a family emergency, to which the passenger menacingly says,
"I'm your family emergency now."
David asks him where he wants him to drive him to, and the passenger says, "Jesus Christ," and laughs before throwing a squeaky toy at him. David drives them out of the garage, and the passenger smiles at him before reaching out his hand as if to grab him, and then closes his hand like he's caught him, or he was trying to do that weird thing he did in Face Off. Take your tits off. That.
I think it's like, he was like, I finally caught him, but it was really weird. I mean, so many of the things he does are weird. Mm-hmm. Even when you know the whole story, you're just kind of like, what the fuck did he do that for? Mm-hmm.
Well, they drive toward the strip, and the passenger pats David down and takes his wallet, phone, and the baby bag from him. David keeps looking back nervously at the passenger, who eventually looks back and says,
What the fuck are you looking at?
David says again that he needs to go back to the hospital, and the passenger tells him to turn here. David starts to plead, saying whatever the passenger wants is his, to which the passenger says, now you're going to talk about your family, about how much you love them and all your heart and all your with all your heart and all your goddamn soul, and goes on to say it's a bit of a cliche. Suddenly, David's phone starts ringing, and the passenger says, you want me to take it? Before telling David, before the interruption, you were going to start up with your phony family speech about how if I were to shoot you through your stupid little earlobe right now, the bullet would, metaphorically speaking, tear through your wife and son as well. Anyone else notice that he kind of did a Walken impression on that line?
Metaphorically speaking, tear through your wife and your son as well. Oh my God. It's just like, I don't know. I feel like the dialogue is actually pretty great. Like,
yeah, it is.
Just from his side of things. Like Joel Kinnaman doesn't get a whole lot to do, but Cage really gets a lot of fucking crazy lines.
This tips David off that the passenger knows more about him than just some random dude. The passenger notices that they're low on gas and tells him to take the next exit, and he gives David one of his credit cards so he can get gas. The passenger looks over at someone else getting gas and says,
Great night. Great fucking night.
He tells David to watch his speed on the highway and says that he once got 3 speeding tickets in 1 month back in South Boston, and says, want to know why? Stress! And then laughs to himself. He notices something.
You want to know why? Stress.
He notices something on his shoe, and while trying to get it off, David mouths to the woman getting gas, help me, and the passenger notices her staring at him, so he says,
Sup?
The passenger realizes something is up, so he walks over to her and says, well, hi. And she nervously jumps into her car and speeds away while the passenger menacingly stares at David again. Passenger tells him, I don't blame you. Might be your one and only shot, but maybe I was following you. Maybe I know where you live. So you run for it. And now you've involved your family, too. They stare at each other for a long beat, and the gas finishes filling, and David tells him to relax. They start driving again, and the passenger searches through David's glove box. He ogles a picture of David and his wife while saying, did somebody say sexy? David almost drives in an oncoming car while nervously watching what the passenger is looking at, and the passenger says, can you look at the road, please, when you're driving? Passenger asks where David's from, and he says Tucson. And then he asks if David has ever been to Boston. David says he's been there once, but it was years ago, which prompts the passenger to put the gun to David's face and say, not for nothing, but you remind me of this guy I used to know in Boston. And this guy used to drink a bottle of Glenlivet every night. Just kill the whole thing right before bed. David said he doesn't drink, to which the passenger says, anymore. David gives him a look before saying he hasn't drank in years, and the passenger again asks him about that one time he was in Boston. David said he works for a shipping company and that he was in Boston for business. The passenger asks if he's sure that's the only time he's been to Boston, and then asks how long it's been since David had a drink. When the passenger says, maybe like 15 years, and when David says, something like that, the passenger says, see, that's funny, you making an error like that this early in the evening. That's really not like you.
This one's kind of hard because it's just like two people talking back and forth for the entire movie. So it's like, can't really break it down story beat wise. You kind of have to like,
and they don't really have
point
names.
out
I mean, one of them
they
has
say.
names, but
Yeah,
right. It's just the passenger. You might as well just say Cage.
Yeah.
David is again confused, and the passenger starts coughing heavily, which is movie code for he'll be dead any day now. David asks when he'll be able to get back to his wife, and the passenger asks why he'd assume he'll ever go home again. The passenger then says the whole trip won't take more than an hour, and that they're driving to Boulder City. The passenger tells David that his mom's dying of lung cancer and that she's a devout Catholic. David interrupts him and says that his mom was religious too, but it didn't stop her from marrying his dad, who beat the shit out of her because he was a drunk. The passenger just stares at him and says, that plea for sympathy was very beneath you, and then says, so anyway, back to my story. And then goes on to say he just needs to take him to the Boulder City Hospital. And David again interrupts him, asking if he has a car. And this prompts the passenger to make a crazy Cage noise since he just interrupted him yet again.
City Hospital.
You have a car?
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. Mm-hmm. This movie is so much more cagey than we are making it seem so far.
Yeah. It's basically
every delivery is insane.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The passenger stares at David for a long beat before saying, "You fucking prick." Pretty understated.
Just because he keeps interrupting him.
I know.
Fucking prick.
Yeah.
David's cell phone rings again, and this time the passenger answers the phone, and David's wife asks where the hell he is. David lies and says he's almost there, and she starts moaning in agony from labor pain, which sounded super fake. Mm-hmm. And the passenger starts harmonizing with her screams, and then she asks who's with him. David says he has the window open, and we hear his wife telling the doctor that when they lost their first baby, the labor took a long time, like it's taking now, and the phone loses signal, and yada yada yada. She just spouts exposition.
But that's one of my questions. Is like, didn't she just go to the hospital? Like, he's on the way to her giving birth. Like, it was presumably she was just put into the hospital like a couple hours before this. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
What's the question?
It's taking a long time. It's like, it's been 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's true. Unless she's been there for all day, I guess. And I don't know. Active labor. I don't know, having gone through it twice. Active labor can take a long time or it cannot. And sometimes it's just, you're just hanging out for hours and hours, but who knows?
Yeah, I guess.
Anyway, she did not sound like a woman giving birth on the phone.
No. Also, someone take the fucking phone from her, please.
Yeah, that was the other thing. Like, if the doctors are actually there, like trying to help work on her, they're not going to let her talk on the phone. Yeah, which I guess they don't. So they take it away from her.
They do. They take it away at a certain point.
Yeah, because like the nurse would call or something if they needed to. Mm-hmm. David suddenly imitates Cage and punches the roof of the car while asking where the fuck they're going.
Such a Cage movie staple.
Yeah. I'm surprised he didn't do it. The passenger puts the gun in his face and whispers, "For the devil may start to envy those who suffer too deeply and throw them into heaven." Don't know where that quote's from.
I think it's from Dante's Inferno.
Maybe.
But I'm not positive.
David again stares at him as if he's heard that before, and suddenly he spots a cop up ahead, so he starts speeding. David asks what happens when they get to Boulder City, and we see police lights flashing behind them. The passenger spots the cop and says, "Well, now you've fucking gone and done it." They drive for a while with the cop car following, and David asks if he should stop. The passenger says, "Would you calm down?" to the cop car, and eventually he tells David to turn down a quiet road. The car pulls over, and the passenger says he just needs him to take him to his mother, and he'll let him go. And there's no reason for anything horrible to befall anyone tonight, but if you so much as look at this cop weird, I will shoot you so fast in the back of your goddamn skull, cranial matter will splatter all over this cop's pressed uniform, and it will be disgusting.
And it'll be disgusting. Like, just his delivery on every line is just so cagey, dude. Which I don't know. It worked for me. I thought it was fun. I had a lot of fun watching this movie.
The cell phone starts to ring again, and the cop knocks on the glass, and the passenger says, "May I ask why we're being pulled over?" The cop says they were speeding 11 miles an hour over the speed limit, which doesn't seem like it would warrant getting pulled over in Vegas, but slow night maybe.
Slow night, yeah.
And continually asks for their license and registration while the passenger antagonizes him like a sovereign citizen. David tries to get his license and registration, but the passenger slaps his hand away, causing the cop to say, "One more question and we're going to have trouble," which makes the passenger say, oh no, not trouble. Please, Mr. Big Policeman, anything but trouble," in a mocking tone. Cop tells him to get out of the car, and the passenger says,
Are you fucking crazy? All I did was ask a simple question, and now this big cop is telling me to get out of the car.
Cop pulls his...
It feels like this all could have been avoided, but, you know.
Yeah, could have just given him a ticket. Cop pulls his gun and tells the passenger he's under arrest, and the passenger says he's way too fucking rude to do what he says, while David begs him to just do what the cop says so he doesn't get shot. The passenger asks if the cop is going to shoot him in front of his friend, and David says, "We're not friends." Well, the passenger says, "Because of this Officer Cock," in a kind of Irish sing-song voice.
Because it's Officer Cock again.
The cop calls for backup, and the passenger says, "Get behind me, Satan," and then shoots the cop. Pulls out the keys so David can't leave, and then blasts the cop in the head 5 more times, which is shown to us in pretty graphic detail.
Kind of unnecessary detail, but whatever. I guess you got the effects budget.
Yeah. Passenger takes the dead cop's cuffs, gets back in the back of the car, and lights up a cigarette before telling David, "I told you not to speed." David freaks out, and the passenger says, "Why are you being such a cock? What's past is past, I always say." Though others say past is prologue, which is really just saying the same thing from a different perspective. But the point is, move on.
What's done is done.
What's done is done.
That's all I can think of when he said that line.
Just move on.
He gives David back the keys and tells him to go back to the Galleria. David says the cop was just doing his job, and the passenger says he was an authoritarian little prick, and David says he could have just destroyed a family. The passenger fucking loses it and says, "I destroyed a family! I destroyed a family! I did!" Passenger tells the shocked David to drive again, and David tells him no. The passenger lifts his gun while giving him a creepy-ass look and then shoots David in the ear like he was trying to assassinate Trump. He tells David the next one goes through your face, and David starts finally driving.
Oh, Jesus.
I'd say that this is crazy that no one came out after hearing 8 gunshots and sirens, but Las Vegas.
They're used to it.
Yeah. Another day.
Act 2. It's about time we had some conflict, wouldn't you say?
The passenger asked David where his sudden bravado came from, since he was a whiny piece of shit a few minutes ago, and now he could headbutt a horse. So many great Cage lines in this one. David asks him why he's doing this, and the passenger again says, "My mother, the hospital. Didn't I already tell you this?" David says his story is bullshit, and again asks him why he's doing this, and he says it's too early to spoil everything. The passenger then says, "Pull over, next exit. I'm famished."
He says it like while looking at the camera too. He breaks the fourth wall a little bit. See if he noticed that when he flicks the cigarette out the window, he looks at the camera when he says, "I won't tell you the whole story. It's too early to spoil everything."
Yeah, it's probably intentional, actually. It actually feels like something that Cage would have brought to the film too. David just stares ahead, and the passenger says, "I can hear you thinking," and says David is planning on crashing the car into something. He unbuckles David's seatbelt so that he won't crash it into something. So rather than crash into something, David opens the door and jumps out while the car is speeding along. It's not something like a normal person would do. So that's kind of another clue as to his actual identity later on. The passenger manages to stop the car moments later before getting out of the car and saying,
Think you broke my beautiful nose, fucker!
as David hides behind a pile of dirt. I want to think that a lot of this was just Cage just improving, but I don't know. There's just so many specifically like perfect lines for Nic Cage that it feels like it was somebody else writing a movie for him.
Yeah.
The passenger makes his way towards David with his gun out, but gets a call on David's phone from his wife. The passenger answers and says he works in the gift shop at the hospital and that David is on a call from the warehouse. Then says, "I'm glad you called because he wanted me to ask you what room number you're in." He says her labor sounds painful, then says, "If it's any consolation, when my wife was pregnant and delivering, there was so much pressure on her bladder. I mean, it was bitchin'. It was a golden shower explosion cascading all over the doctor's face. It was sexual, man." As you do. Then he says, "Hey, come on, screw you, lady." And he hangs up. When David finally reveals himself, that's when he finally hangs up on her. The passenger asks what David thinks of his nose and says,
Huh? You like that? What do you think? Still sexy? Dressed up for this night. Now you break my nose? I wanted to be 100% sex tonight, and you cut that in half. I'm now 50% sex.
Then Cage does his Bogart impression for the 900th time since we've been doing the show, while saying, "You can't see me, huh? Come on, sugar." When David gets to him, the passenger punches him in the face and tells him, "Don't fucking do that again." David begs him to let him get back to his wife, but the passenger tells him to get back in the car. It's just the whole movie, just in this car, in a diner. That's it. So a whole movie.
Yep.
David pops his shoulder back into place, doing the whole Lethal Weapon thing. And for, because he jumped out of a moving car. That's why his shoulder's out of place. And then the passenger says, "Wow, David Chamberlain, you stud muffin. I wonder how many blue-collar losers know how to do that." Again, slightly revealing who he actually is. Back on the road, the passenger says his wife is fine and then asks if she and David have a happy marriage. And he says, "Sometimes it's like we're the only happy people we know." And the passenger says, "Well, I've never been happy." This is the weirdest fucking moment in the film. It's so out of place. Then he says, "You know why? Sinuses. Ever since I was a small child, I've had a stuffy nose. And even at the tender age of 2 years old, I knew the cause of my stuffy nose. I could see it in my dreams, and the cause was the mucus man." David stares at him bewildered like the rest of us, and the passenger continues. "The mucus man was a skinny guy in a suit and tie with a bald head and a briefcase full of boogers. And I could see him in my mind's eye going up, up, up in an elevator, briefcase in hand. And he glided across the floor, almost like a snail's trail. And he got to my bed and he opened the briefcase and he scooped out a handful of boogers and sprinkled them into my nose." And yeah, that's just the end of that. Absolute fuck, dude. What does that have to do with anything? I thought it was going to come back in some way, but what the fuck, dude? It's like a solid minute and a half long monologue, and it's like, what the fuck does this have to do with anything else in this movie?
You could do that, but they don't explain the Ace of Spades.
Yeah.
Like, is that just a Cage monologue? Did he just improv it?
I don't know. I love
is that
it,
a real story
but I also
of his?
don't understand it at all. Yeah, it's just Cage is like, when I was a kid, I thought it was a space alien. I had the mucus man climbing in my nose.
Here, let me read you a book of my poetry.
They stop at a Roadhouse diner where some trucker eyes the passenger's red hair.
Roadhouse diner. It's just called the Roadhouse Diner.
Yeah, it's just called
The
Roadhouse.
Roadhouse, yeah. And a passenger spots the passenger's red hair and jacket and just says,
Faggot.
while drinking his coffee.
Oh, it's so you don't feel bad when he gets killed.
Yeah, honestly.
He's a bad guy.
Yeah. The passenger says there's an important man waiting for their arrival and that his associates are the ones who found him in the first place. David says they found the wrong guy, but the passenger continues by saying the plan was drive him all the way to Boston, but this old fucking Mickey was too antsy. So he flew to a private airstrip in Boulder City, which is where they're going. Spoilers, I don't think this person exists at all, but we'll talk about that later. The passenger spots no substitutions on the menu and gets upset, which becomes the entire plot of the movie for the next 5 minutes or so.
Not like a Tarantino thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. The passenger snaps at David and tells him to pay attention, then launches into a story about a bookkeeper from Brooklyn who lived in South Boston and worked for a hard-drinking Catholic named Jacob Sullivan. He says the bookkeeper met a girl, fell in love, got married, and had a baby. He spots the waitress coming and tells David to tell the waitress he fell down some stairs before saying, "That's right, you fell down some stairs, you clumsy shit."
Say, "Where's stairs?"
The waitress gives David a look and he says, "I fell down some stairs," immediately followed by the passenger saying, "He fell down some stairs." She asks what happened to the passenger and he says, "I was at the bottom of the stairs when he fell." I love this diner scene might be on his final reel of like insane performances. The final Nic Cage loses his shit compilation. They each order coffee and she explains the house mozzarella tuna melt special, but the passenger says, "What if I want cheddar?" And she points at the no substitutions on the menu. She says it's the owner's rules, who also happens to be the cook, and the passenger is shocked that the no substitutions rule is a real thing. Just really, they really drive this one home. She says
so you don't feel bad when he gets killed.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Fucker wouldn't do substitutions.
We've all been there.
He deserves to die. She says she can slide him a block of cheddar under the table, and he looks around like a maniac for a second before saying, "That's very sweet of you." She leaves so the passenger continues his story, saying that one of Sullivan's associates started skimming money on the side. And when Sullivan found out, he asked the bookkeeper to invite the associate over since the two of them were good friends. Once the associate was good and drunk, one of Sullivan's guys came along and shot the guy in the head. And the same thing is going to happen to David when he gets to Boulder City. The waitress returns and the passenger says he'll take the tuna melt with cheddar if you can slip it past your goddamn creep of a boss. And she gives him a death stare. Felt like this waitress was pretty good in this moment. David says he doesn't want anything, but the passenger insists he orders something. But David says he's not hungry. They argue for a bit before the passenger says, "Order something, you stupid fuck." David says he'll take the tuna melt. So the passenger asks if he also wants cheddar. And eventually he says yes, while the waitress looks more and more uncomfortable from this lover's quarrel or whatever the fuck she thinks is going on here. We beat each other up and then we eat food and then we fuck and then we order food and then we fuck again. She walks away and the passenger says he's been thinking of David's biography that he's fed him, which he says is designed to garner sympathy, and he violently rips open 4 packets of Sweet and Low for his coffee with his teeth, since he has to do it one-handed because he's holding a gun with the other hand. He says, "In my experience, most people tend to think having a family makes you more sympathetic. Before anyone takes a bullet to the head, they're always prattling on about their fucking daughter this, their fucking son that, but the fact that you would do that strikes me as tone deaf." I guess, I feel like this movie does benefit from a repeat viewing, but at the same time, a lot of the stuff is kind of like, there's not a whole lot of story here.
Yeah.
Honestly.
No.
It's just
it's
kind of
a
like
lot of style over substance.
Yeah, for sure. The passenger says he usually waits till the sun goes down to start drinking, but today I've been drinking all day. Ask me why.
I guess that explains some stuff.
Yeah, I guess that's why he's so over the top.
Yeah.
It strikes me more as like cocaine addled than drunk.
Yeah.
Although I feel like Cage drunk is probably similar to this.
Probably, yeah.
Maybe he's
very aggressive.
just been buzzed the whole day, so he's a little bit uncaged.
He's a little wired,
but still in charge of his faculties.
Yeah. David refuses, and the passenger gets angry again before saying, "You know, I do think about the way your life has gone, how happy you are, how you've got this secret fucking happiness, new wife, new son, eternal goddamn love." David begs him to tell him who he thinks he is, so Cage stares at him with a crazy smile, and his eyes get fucking huge like a cartoon character before he starts laughing and says, "You're the witching hour," which is what the waitress said about what time it is earlier.
Which I guess is to mean like, when I first watched, I was like, what the fuck, doesn't even make sense. But I think he's just saying like, you're the reason I'm crazy right now. Basically, like, it's you. You're the reason that all this is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still doesn't explain why he went full vampire's kiss, eyes bulging out at him. Yeah. I guess because he's just fucking admit it. I just want you to fucking admit it.
I feel like he's like right there. Like he's like, it's gonna finally happen.
Yeah.
It's excited.
He says it's when all the supernatural, the witching hour, he says, is when all the supernatural creatures wither out and run amok. David starts to say something and the passenger screams, "Do not fucking interrupt me, god damn it. I told you that in the car. You're always running off at the mouth. You got a motor mouth. There's a motorboat stuck in your mouth. Just shut up." What the fuck, dude?
Oh, man.
I feel like some of that was on the paper and some of that was Cage.
Yeah.
You got a motorboat stuck in your mouth probably was not in the script.
A motor mouth.
The trucker who called him the other F word starts standing up to leave, and the passenger says,
"Get the fuck back down!"
That might be the most Cagey moment.
Yeah. It's
the stare is
really
probably
cagey.
the most Cagey moment, but that line is probably the most Cagey line.
Yeah. Suddenly, he punches David in the face and slams his head on the table before handcuffing him to like the bottom thing, whatever the pole.
Leg.
The passenger whips out his gun and tells the trucker he's watching him before making his way to the kitchen, where he rips a phone off the wall and takes the cook and waitress's cell phones and throws them into a fryer. Would that explode? Do you think that would explode? I don't know.
I mean, lithium batteries explode, but only when they're exposed to air. So
Yeah.
probably not. It probably just melt.
Gotcha. Yeah. He tells them to stay where he can see them and asks how much longer the tuna melts will take. It's vitally important. I guess he probably is literally
He's probably hungry.
hungry.
Yeah. Who knows how long he's been standing waiting in the parking lot for
Yeah.
him to show up.
Creepily hanging out in the shadows, just waiting for him. He takes the waitress by the hand and says he wants them in first he says 5 minutes, then he said, no, 4 minutes. And that they want cheddar since nobody puts mozzarella on a tuna melt. The passenger stops at the jukebox on his way back to David to cue up the most menacing of songs for a crazy diner holdup or kidnapping or whatever's going on here. I Love the Nightlife by Alicia Bridges. He starts singing along while doing a little Steph Curry inspired shimmy dance before doing some weird as hell move with his arm while dancing at the trucker guy who called him the F word earlier. He dances over to David, who stares at the nut job who kidnapped him the same way all of us would in that situation. What the hell? Meanwhile, Cage just keeps singing along, clearly having the fucking time of his life. I think Cage had a blast making this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Finally, he stops and says, I've decided that we should play a little game. It's called Stop the Phony. Do people from Boston say phony a lot?
This guy does.
David begs him to let everyone else go, but the passenger insists David stop lying and tell him the truth or he'll kill everyone in the diner. The passenger pulls out a rabbit's foot and says, Magic rabbit's foot says go. Tick, 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 tick while tapping it on the table. I like, there are so, I think this is the longest list of cagey moments that I had to write down. There might be like a 9-minute long cagey moments.
Like I said, it's everything he does.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
David again pleads his innocence.
It's sort of like it's like Eddie King, but like Eddie King was only in 30 minutes of Deadfall or 20 minutes or whatever, and 15 minutes of Arsenal. Like if you just had him through the whole movie, if he was the main character,
this is what it would be.
Yeah.
David again pleads his innocence, saying he has no idea what he's talking about, and says, "I never got your name." Sorry, I went into Cage's accent.
Yeah, you did.
I never got your name. Let's just get out of here, just you and me. While the passenger is again disgusted by David's tactics. You little bitch. David's cell phone rings again, and the passenger hands it over, saying, "Let's just make sure everything is okay." But it turns out to be a telemarketer calling about his car's extended warranty. You scoff at them calling him at 2 a.m., but those fuckers are relentless. The passenger laughs and takes the phone back and insinuates that something terrible must have happened to his wife and or baby since she's not trying to get a hold of him anymore. A woman and a kid stroll into the diner, prompting the passengers to say, oh shit, it's getting good."
What the fuck are they doing at 2 a.m?
I know.
That's Vegas, baby.
One of my couple of questions. Yeah, I guess. The passenger says the food will be done soon, so he'd better start telling the truth while crazily tapping the rabbit's foot on the table and begging David to drop the phony act. David continues to say he has him confused with someone else, and the passenger says, "You should prepare yourself mindset-wise. That way it won't be such a shock when it happens. Assume the worst is what I mean." And then he winks at him, which is very cagey. That might be the look, the cagey look of the film.
Yeah.
If we had a category, there's only like a few movies that have the cagiest look of the film, but when it happens, you're just kind of like, holy shit. Yeah, we could think of like Grand Isle, that crazy look that Walter gives him, and Vampire's Kiss, obviously. David asks him what he wants him to say, and the passenger says, "You're not changing tactics, not even a little. You're awesome, buddy." As you do. This whole scene is like a tour de Cage. David says he's not who he thinks he is yet again, and the passenger says, "I never even told you who I think you are, so how could you know you're not who I think you are?" He does the tick, tick, tick thing again with the rabbit's foot and says, "Time's up," while saying David fucked up. He leans forward just enough for David to headbutt him, which I guess was you could headbutt a horse was foreshadowing there. The waitress drops the tuna melts on her way out to give them to him, and the trucker gets up to run while the passenger just starts blasting. David hits him on the wrist, causing the passenger to miss several times before he bashes David in the face. The passenger gets up and blasts the trucker before choking him to death, while David watches on horrified. Like, I guess he didn't vibe with that trucker guy. Some of this just seems kind of like, well, yeah, all right. So we understand why he's going later on. We understand why he's going after David here, but like, why is he killing all of these other people? Killing the cop, killing this dude.
He's on a rampage, dude.
David tells the woman and kid to run while the passenger reloads, but she just sits there like the good mother who takes her kid to a diner at 2 a.m. that she is. The passenger finishes off the trucker and makes his way to the woman and her kid, putting the gun to her head, hoping for a reaction from David. And he at last says, okay, it's me. I'm exactly who you think I am, which puts a huge maniac smile on the passenger's face.
Act 3. Time to resolve some shit.
The passenger throws David out of the booth onto the floor and says, it's you, it's fucking you. while beating the shit out of David on the floor as he says, it's you, over and over and over again. Finally, the passenger says, hey, James, you did this. The passenger then gets up and shoots the cook in an alleyway while the woman and kid run out. He then tracks down the waitress in the bathroom and asks if she meant what she said about slipping him a block of cheddar cheese under the table. He asks if she was being rude or nice. She says, while sobbing, and he shows remorse on his face before leaving her alive. While all this is happening, we see David desperately trying to free himself from the cuffs attached to the table, and we see him trying to get his phone with his foot. David eventually gets the phone and calls 911 and tells them what happened and where they are. The passenger turns the burners to the stove on and chucks a bottle of liquor on it, causing the kitchen to go up in flames. And because this is some random diner in the middle of nowhere, they couldn't afford to install the fire suppressant system that is required by law to open a commercial kitchen. David finally gets free from the table just as the passenger walks out while saying, James, better to rain in hell. Wouldn't you agree?
I feel like these all have to be quotes from something, right? Like,
well, that's one of the quotes attributed to the devil, right?
Yeah.
Better to rain in hell.
Milton or something. Devil's not in the Bible, so it's not from the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
David or James or whoever he is runs for it, and the passenger shoots him in the leg. David hobbles to a car in the lot and uses his belt as a tourniquet for his leg, and we see the passenger has made a bunch of Molotov cocktails out of bottles from the bar, which he throws at the cars in the parking lot while saying,
Great night! Great fucking night!
The passenger.
I just feel like the cops would have been on top of this so fast, dude.
Yeah, especially because he hasn't done it yet, has he? Did he? Did he call it? Did we?
Yeah, he called
911.
Yeah, there should have been.
Yeah.
And a cop was just murdered on the street, and
right.
But it's Vegas, so it's like
that's true.
There's a dozen cops murdered every night there.
Still, it takes like 20 minutes for them.
Yeah.
I guess they're supposed to be out in the middle of nowhere, so maybe.
Yeah.
It's
kind of vague where they are, but the passenger says he's been watching him, his wife, and son for a while now, and that it's time for him to wake up. The passenger calls his cell phone in David's pocket and says, "What are you, ghosting me? What are you, Dr. Ross? My psychiatrist?" The passenger says he's going to finish the bookkeeper story from the diner while David tries to figure out his next move. He says the bookkeeper invited the associate over, shot him in the head, but unfortunately, the bookkeeper's wife walked in and witnessed the execution. He says the bookkeeper's wife started to unravel afterwards by drinking, taking pills, and telling the story of the execution to anyone who would listen. The passenger says it was his own wife and that she had become a liability, which means he's the bookkeeper from the story. Then he says that's when he got a call from James Levine, a.k.a. David, not the Maroon 5 guy. David sneakily crawls through the chaos before bumping into the cook dying beside a semi-truck. He leaves the cook behind, and eventually the passenger finds the dying cook and finishes the job while still looking around for David, who runs up behind him and throws the passenger to the ground. They fight for a while, and eventually David gets the upper hand, beating the passenger the same way he was beaten earlier, but he stops when the passenger says exactly which room his wife is in the hospital. Mm-hmm. David pauses long enough for the passenger to grab his gun and pistol whip him to the face. The passenger puts the gun on David and says his wife is in room 829 and says, "I don't kill mothers as a rule, unlike some people I know, but I swear to God, James, if you don't stop acting like this funny little bitch, I'll break my own rules just this one time." David says he'll do whatever he wants as long as he leaves his wife and family out of it, and they get back into David's car before the cops can arrive. We see the car on the highway driving into a storm and the passenger lighting a cigarette for each of them.
Like, just in time, like burn down half a fucking city block. I mean, I guess kind of out in the middle of nowhere. It seems like they've driven
you got to get
about
that hellish imagery somehow.
Yeah,
true.
For that whole scene.
Mm-hmm.
David asks what happened to the passenger / bookkeeper's wife and daughter, and the bookkeeper says he got a call from James Levine, who told him his wife had become a liability, and the bookkeeper decided to leave Boston for good to avoid the wrath of Jacob Sullivan and the guy who fixes things for him, James Levine. The bookkeeper says he left to get supplies, but when he got back home, he found his house on fire and talks about the pet rabbits his daughter loved to play with, screaming. Lifted from Silence of the Lambs.
The rabbits, George.
It still haunts me now, David. You could hear them screaming.
You hear the screams of the rabbits, George.
Silence of the rabbits. Just crossing references.
He's like, he looks at David. Would you fuck me? I'd fuck me. David looks at the road and says, I know I'm going to die tonight. I understand. And you made a promise that I know you're going to keep. He once again doubles down and says that he is David Chamberlain and not James Levine, which prompts the bookkeeper to lose it. He says,
You are so fucked in the head, James! You're so fucked in the head you actually believe you're David Chamberlain!
The passenger starts coughing and David says he knows he's dying and that this is the end for him too. Suddenly, the bookkeeper hears a siren behind them, and we see flashing lights. The bookkeeper says, you know, the Japanese say the more violent the death, the higher in heaven you go. And then he says, all right, fixes his hair and says, let's do this, before putting the gun to David's head. David tells him to wait and asks why he didn't just kill him the second he stepped in the car. And the passenger says he wanted to see his true lizard face reawoken. David says Sullivan ordered the hit. And he flicks his cigarette at the passenger and jerks the car into a ravine, flipping it. The passenger / bookkeeper wakes up to find the cop car up on the hill with a couple officers getting it out to investigate.
Climbs out and goes, ow, ow.
Ooh. Ow. You son of a bitch. Or what does he say in Deadfall? Motherfucker.
I was trapped in paradise.
Yeah.
The car
4 lefts is a circle.
Suddenly, 2 shots take out the cops, and we see David standing over the passenger with a gun in his hand. He gives the bookkeeper an evil look. James smirks after looking at the dead cops and puts his foot on the passenger's neck, but stops and says, I need you to know I never meant to kill your little girl. Your wife, when she saw my face, she went crazy. She just jumped on me and started clawing my face off. And I pulled the trigger 3 times.
Face off.
He goes on to say after he shot, he saw the bookkeeper's daughter dead in the hallway. Then he says he was drinking himself to death, but God brought Maggie, his wife, into his life, and he knew that God was evening the score when his firstborn died during childbirth. He goes on to say he couldn't stop seeing the bookkeeper's wife and daughter, but when he had his boy, it was like he was given a new life, and God gave him back the life he wrongly took. They stare at each other for a long beat, and James says, I think you gave me closure tonight. I wish I could have done the same for you. The bookkeeper starts sobbing while choking on blood, and James gets on top of him and starts jerking him off. I mean, he starts choking him to death. It's a little fantasy I had there. Sorry, guys.
He was doing both at the same time.
He started jerking his ween. It was all biological, man. James stares at the passenger dead on the ground, cleans his prints off the gun, puts the gun into the passenger's hand, and picks up the ace of spades the passenger gave him earlier and puts it into his pocket. James then checks his voicemail where he learns that his wife gave birth to a baby girl and they're both doing fine. We hear sirens in the distance and he starts saying, I'm David Chamberlain, over and over while waiting for the cops to arrive. Once they arrive, he asks them for help and puts his hands in the air. The end.
Just nothing really happened in this thing.
No. Nope.
Well, like that's the fastest breakdown we've done.
Well, because like you said, it's just 2 people talking to each other in the car most of the fucking time. The most action that takes place is at the diner, and even that's short.
Yeah.